Hello and welcome to the Wine and Wisdom Show. Thank you for being here tonight. This show is all about connection. And I'm sure you will agree that one of the most positive things that has come out of this extremely stressful and uncertain time is that we need to connect. We need to proactively connect with people who put a smile on our face, they put some warmth in our heart, and they put some wisdom in our head. And, you know, that's what this show is all about. And I feel like I've been really lucky throughout my life that I have been surrounded by extremely talented and interesting people. So the reason I wanted to start this Wine and Wisdom show was firstly so I could connect with you and have a wine with you digitally, virtually. Just to note that we started doing this in 2019 before virtual wines were a thing. You saw it here first. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is so that I could showcase some of the most resilient and courageous self-leaders who I believe are really making a difference to this world. And tonight's guest is no exception to that. Oh my God, you are in for a treat. And I have a very special dress on because of it. You'll see why in a minute. So I want to explain to you a little bit about the context of why I have the incredible Lucy Bloom on here tonight. It was about 2002 and my sister gifted me a book called The Hospital by the River. And it was an amazing book about an amazing Australian woman called Catherine Hamlin. And she had gone to Ethiopia and had set up, she was a gynecologist and set up an amazing practice there with her husband to help women who had labour-induced fistulas. And you know, at the time, I had only just set up my Education and Girls Empowerment Foundation in Vanuatu, so I was very interested in incredible women who were doing incredible things, and I have followed her ever since. And then all of a sudden, about 10 years after that, something incredible happened to that foundation because one of the most amazing women was brought into their world, and she was the CEO of the Australian arm of that foundation, and her name was Lucy Bloom. And I have been, she doesn't know this, she doesn't know she can hear me, but she doesn't know I'm saying this. I have been kind of following her. I wouldn't say stalking, I have not been stalking, but I've had a bit of a girl crush ever since then. And so when I reached out to her to bring her onto this Q&A on Wine and Wisdom, and she said yes, I was like, oh my God. So without me making more of a fool of myself, I'm going to bring her up so you can share with her, with all her wisdom that she's going to have for us tonight. Here we go.
Hi.
Oh my God, I've got pink hair and I've got a pink dress. Look at that.
Perfect. Welcome to my boudoir. And that's my whale. My whale above my whale.
Oh, yes. Look at that lovely whale. Hello, Lucy. Thank you so much for being here. Did you just hear me to say that I had a girl crush on you?
I did.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable, or are you all right with that?
That's very nice of you. And it's totally fine to stalk in a professional sense. I do that every day.
Of course, that's all that it is. Of course, that's all it is. So, look, I've given a little bit of an intro, but what I would love for you to do is to share with everyone who's either watching now or who is going to be watching after we hang up, because that's what happens with a lot of Facebook Live. Oh, no, you know what? I need to check one thing. Have you got a wine with you?
I do. I have a little tipple.
Little tipple?
Yes.
Have you got
in a mini glass I bought a few years ago.
Oh, they're often the best ones. And we'd love to know, like those who are listening, have you got a wine with you? Are you drinking red? Are you drinking white? Have you got G&T? What have you got? Let us know in the comments so we know that you are joining us for Wine and Wisdom properly. And while you're doing that, we're going to get Lucy to share with us, you know, who she is, what she does, and how she's sprinkling positivity in our world. Off you go, Lucy.
Oh, thanks. Look, I was the CEO of the charitable entity that funded the the network of hospitals in Ethiopia. But my time with that organisation ended in 2015. And that I do refer to that year as the year of the shit sandwich, and that's well covered in my memoir. But these days I'm mainly a speaker. I speak at a lot of events, and that world has been turned upside down of late.
Yeah.
So those live events, which I adore, I love the electricity of those events, and I really love the fun of being on stage. But those events have been converted into online events. In a lot of ways. A lot have been just canned, but a lot have been converted to online events. So I do a lot of speaking, and I'm a writer. I have 2 books that I promote my heart out with those 2 books, and I'm a consultant. So I'm a business fixer. I go into businesses depending on what's falling over and work out how to fix them. As far as spreading positivity goes, I guess that's just how I am, and it's how I've run every team. It's how when you read the way I write, it's very positive and upbeat. Sometimes I have to really override, everyone has flat as a pancake days, and I have to override those feelings and actually force myself to be positive. I often speak on this in my speeches. I talk about how anxiety can really take over. And you have to, I've learned the skill. I had a motorcycle accident when my first year out of high school, and I spent a lot of time in hospital. And during that hospital time, instead of being anxious about things I couldn't control, I hated being out of control.
Yeah.
But instead of being anxious about things I couldn't control, I fantasized about best case scenarios. And that is a much more creative, exciting way to think. And I still use that, here I am, 27 years later, and if I have a huge speech and I'm nervous about new content and a whopping audience, and I find it hard to sleep the night before, I fantasize about best case scenarios. So I get a standing ovation at the end of that speech. And then George Clooney comes on stage with one of those giant novelty checks for $100,000. And then I push my brain further, and then I'm actually picturing myself getting on a plane with one of those novelty checks and put it in my overhead luggage. And it's it is a really creative thing to do, much more positive way to push your brain. And I guess I had a lot of practice doing that when I had 14 reconstructive operations to put me back together. It's quite a skill. So that's how I practice positivity in my life.
Yeah, and I mean, I have read your book, and it is Get the Girls Out, and we're going to talk about that a bit tonight. It is, seeing how many times you've risen above adversity and kept on doing, reinventing yourself. And I suppose that's what I really wanted to bring you on tonight, because so many people have, well, apart from, the fact that I've been, kind of stalking you for all these years, so many people during this whole pandemic they've lost jobs, they've lost their positions. I mean, I was talking to a woman who was the organisational change manager on one of our largest national companies, very successful. I'd been doing some work there. It was a huge role that she had there for years, but all of a sudden she was now in the call centre. That was the only way they could keep her in job. So this kind of transformation that everyone's had to go through with little or big ways, this reinvention, this pivot that is being used so much. Having to do
sometimes the pivot is actually a nosedive. Pivot is sometimes a nice word for faceplant.
Yeah.
Really hard. I was talking to a friend of mine. She's an Aboriginal midwife in Victoria, and the whole COVID-19 bizzo had forced her to have a whole stack of time off, and it gave her the clearance and time, because she's got a bunch of kids. I think she has 6 or 7 kids. Coolest chick. She's she's learning how to be a hot air balloon pilot. She's the coolest chick. But COVID-19 has forced her to have time off, which actually gave her the time she needed to take a long, hard look at her health. She realised she had kidney disease. And now this has given her this clearance to deal with her health give her a reboot. And she said, honestly, if it hadn't been for COVID-19, she said, I would have shortened my life expectancy seriously. So there's some really cool upsides to that forced rest. And I think from my perspective, I really miss all that money in my bank account that used to come in.
Yeah.
Missing that. I miss my mum because she's 80 and I can't go and see her. But otherwise, this has been a privilege to have this forced time off. It just takes balls of steel to use the time off positively. It really does. And I think we all have our ups and downs where the roller coaster is really hard to take. There are days where you're freaking out about how am I going to keep paying this mortgage? Or hey, Chris Renwick, look at you logged in. The ups and downs are tough. But if you can step back from the worry of the unknown and use this time as like an enforced sabbatical, those are for the people who are forced to have some time off. Yeah. If you can use that like an enforced sabbatical, it will be time so well spent. And here's a really juicy example. When 10 years ago, I was running an advertising agency and I had one juicy big client. They represented 80% of our business, and that's not ideal, but it's just how the world tends to flow. You can't help it. What are you going to do? Say no. So, but pedal hard, and we lost this client suddenly. And this used to happen. They're a major client, big brand, and if a new person came in, they'd say, "Oh, we're looking for a new marketing. We're going to go with big ad agency, mainstream ad agency," and then it would cause such chaos. But we lost them. And we thought we'd never get them back. Lost this major client, 80% of our business. I thought, this is my chance to write the book I've always wanted to write. And my husband at the time really didn't want me to write a book. He wanted me to focus on getting new business. But I thought, I'm never going to get this juicy chunk of time to write this book. So I ignored him because he was definitely, I'm the optimist, he was the pessimist. I just said, no, I'm going to write this book. I wrote that book, and that book has been a consistent income for me for the last 10 years. Yeah. I'm so glad I wrote that book. And I've just republished that book, and I look at this shiny thing. Oh, let me just show it off.
Oh, look at that.
That's what I wrote when I lost that client, and I've just updated it. And I look at that thing, and I think it's just going to tick away. And just before we came online, orders were coming in, and I'll fulfill those tomorrow. And that was created in that space that I didn't want to have. Yeah. Enforced sabbatical, and I just went hard and used that time. But it's tough going. It's hard to stay positive all the time. You just have to kind of accept that sometimes there's flat as pancake days that suck really hard. Yeah. And I also think it depends on who you work for and what you do, whether you're overworked or completely unoccupied at the moment. It seems to be one or the other.
It does seem to be one or the other, and it's really hard to tap into the other end of the spectrum where you're not at. And
that's right. And I'm people really overwork, working monster hours. Anyone in supermarkets, freight. There's so many. Australia Post is working 24 hours a day. Yeah. There's some businesses that have really, really tapped out, and others that are putting their staff off. It was such an unpredictable turn of events.
It sure was. And if anybody's listening right now and you think that they could do with a dose of Lucy, please tag them or share them to your profile right now with your friends so people can tap into the wisdom that she's going to share with us and is sharing with us. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comment box and we will get her to answer. I believe she's going to give away what are you going to give away, and who's it going to go to?
Well, I'll give away I call this the Blooming Bundle. There we go. Which is a copy of each of my books. Get the Girls Out, which is my memoir, and Cheers to Childbirth, which is a dad's guide to childbirth support. There we go. And if you're not expecting a baby, that's okay. Just read all the birth stories because they're gorgeous. Don't crack the spine, and then give it to someone who is having a baby. Yeah, and you just have to make a comment, and a friendly comment, and we'll choose someone randomly who's made a comment on our chat this evening.
Lucy, in your book, I mean, you talked about it. There was this wonderful part of it where you talked about having new adventures and how I think it was when your kids were 8 and then 14, they got to choose an adventure, or you chose it for them. I can't remember which way it was. Or you massaged what adventure they were going to have. But it was all about, life should be filled with adventures. And I think right now everyone feels, because they've been self-isolating for so long, there's all this uncertainty about if there's when there's going to be international travel, who knows that. But the gates will open up for national travel, we would imagine, at some stage this year, maybe in a month or so. What do you say to people about, even though they're stuck in this uncertainty and there's fear and all that going on, tell us what your thoughts are about right now, amongst all the uncertainty, having a plan for a new adventure. Why is it important, and what should you do?
Well, I find for myself, I have to have my next adventure planned or I'm getting antsy. So my rule is I need flights booked in my Qantas app. If I have my Qantas app and there's no flights, I start to get a little bit antsy. Like, what are my plans?
Yeah.
And I did have a gorgeous trip planned in June, which I've had to postpone, and that's to go to a private island in the Philippines with my kids. So they close. It's a child-free island, which would normally be awesome, but I am going to take my kids, and every now and then they close the island, and I know the owner of the island and his grandkids come out from the States, and so that plan will definitely come to fruition at some point as soon as we can travel. And I'm sure we'll be able to travel at some stage. Look, if nobody travels in 2020, that's okay. Like, if the worst thing that happens in 2020 is we're a bit bored, that's okay. It'll give us time to take stock, and maybe that means traveling locally. I was chatting to another fellow speaker, and we were talking about how much we loved Wagga. We both had spoken in Wagga, and that reminded me of a friend who she lived in Sydney. She was a midwife. She was an acupuncturist, actually, and she searched all over Australia for a regional centre she wanted to move to. She did all the research and she chose Wagga. And she said it was the best place for all the things she wanted. And there's so much fun to be had regionally. So there's lots of adventures to be had close to home. And look, I turn anything into an adventure. Day before yesterday, my 14-year-old and I went to Costco, which I just find the funniest place. So, it's just so funny because everything has to be in such ridiculous quantities. And you can buy 30 croissants and an inflatable island. Which is
so important to do.
Funny. And we do tend to turn any little trip into an adventure and into some fun, and get Maccas on the way and do drive-through. And my kids tell me not to tell the lady off in the drive-through. So I guess it's just a general attitude to life. Sally Lansbury's asking, was it Boracay? No, it was. It's an island called Noa Noa Private Island, and it's off Palawan. Beautiful little island. NoaNoaIsland.com. I built their website. Have a lookie.
Oh.
So
and I know
it's crucial to have adventures planned, but treat every day like an adventure. Explore, learn new stuff, walk in different directions. I've been doing a particular walk, and they've closed off some of the cliff walk between Coogee and Bondi. Yes. And that forced me to take different routes, and I found this really great uphill, like a pearl right up this hill. It's walk in different directions, sit in different seats, Life doesn't have to be an adventure that includes overseas flights, although those are fabulous.
It doesn't. And, I mean, we're getting lots of lovely comments here, and I'd love you everybody to put, what is the number one adventure that you are going to do as soon as you can? I want you to put in the comments so we can have a look at that. And I think it's really important to say that, earlier this year and the end of last year, Australia had the most horrendous bushfires, and our regional areas were decimated. So if we can plan to have adventures in those areas to help boost that economy, I mean, that would be a wonderful thing to be able to do. That's my 2 bits on that. But
yeah, absolutely. And they're unreal. Like Tamworth is such a cool place to travel to. These are New South Wales because I'm in Sydney, so it's places I can drive to. I'm speaking at a big event that's turned online for Ballarat Chamber of Commerce. Those regional centres are awesome places to travel to.
They really are. And Lucy, on that, discovering new adventures, planning for new adventures, how does the actual plan, even if you're not 100% sure when or how it's going to happen right now, how does that change how you feel every day when you get to plan for an adventure?
Yeah, I honestly think half of the fun is the planning. The actual adventure is freaking exhausting usually. All of the fun is planning, thinking, Googling, talking. When I took my 8-year-old to India, we did a horse trek in Rajasthan. And that was inspired by a woman I met in Byron Bay who was selling all her Indian dresses, an Indian lady, and she was selling all her cotton dresses. And one of them had a hole in it. And so the dress was only $5, the other ones were 20. And I said, why is this one $5? She said, oh, it's got a little tear in it from the time I was riding horses in Rajasthan. That's all she said to me. And then I was like, Googling, what do you mean horses in Rajasthan?
Yeah.
And then discovered these horses with the cute curly ears. And then, so my kids think they chose their adventures, but you're absolutely right. I did kind of go in the right direction for an adventure.
Look at this adventure. Wouldn't you like to have that?
An adventure I was very keen on. And the planning of that was so much fun. And we found a local agent. I found that a really good thing to do, to actually find someone on the ground in that country to book your on-the-ground stuff. So I book my flights here, but I find a local agent. And, so much fun. The anticipation of fun is part of the fun. Going to bed with butterflies, you're so excited about riding a horse in Rajasthan, that can happen months beforehand. And you don't even need a departure date. One of the things I really want to do is to swim with the whales in Tonga. I have no idea when I'm going to do that, but I follow a few things on Instagram, and every time I see whales and people snorkeling with them, I know I'm going to do that someday. I know it's going to be in September. I know I've got to find the right person who wants to go with me, but it's going to happen. Yeah. And I get the thrills because I know it will happen. It's on my list and it's going to happen. And I'm not the kind of person who says one day. Actually, we'll do it. And maybe next September. It probably won't be this September because of travel restrictions, but it's going to happen. So it's half the fun.
Half the fun to plan it.
Yeah.
And it helps to give kind of purpose to days where there's just franticness or there's boredom, to have that future, the optimism going forward for something that's going to happen, that's going to be really good, and it's going to fill you up and fill you with joy.
And start following those places and things on whatever platform you enjoy, Pinterest, whatever, it's Instagram for me. And I still follow places, beautiful, gorgeous places in Palawan in the Philippines, because I've been there a couple of times, places in Uganda. They're just so beautiful. And for them to come up in your feed before and for years after, it's part of the fun.
Lucy, I would describe your life as a courageous life. And I love the word courage. I've written a book called Her Middle Name is Courage. And when I've always thought of the word that I want to be remembered for is that word courage, that no matter what goes on in life, that girl, she's filled with courage. And I know that you are. In your words, what does it mean to lead a courageous life, especially at a time right now when there is a lot of fear and uncertainty? And even though in Australia we're starting to see the light a little bit, there's the end of the tunnel, but again, we're not sure if that will be brought back because of what actually happens. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. The economic unfolding is still to come. There'll be years of things that happen because of what has gone on right now that are not going to be great. I know that your life has changed quite remarkably as well. So when there is fear and uncertainty, what does it mean to lead a courageous life, and how do you advise others to step into that?
Sure, good question. And I give whole speeches on this.
I know. I watch them on YouTube.
Tell me if I go on too long. Look, I have a definition of courage. To me, courage is showing up even though you know things might not turn out so well. So it's not courage if you know you're going to win. It's not courage if, you know, like when you go on a roller coaster, that's not courage because you know you're going to be fine, unless you're at Dream World. Courage is about when things are not going to turn out okay, you show up anyway, you face the music and you don't behave like a pork chop. You behave with grace. So it's showing up even though you know things won't turn out so grand, and you don't behave like a peanut. That's what courage is to me.
Yeah, right.
So living a courageous life is not about facing a firing squad or jumping out of an aeroplane into a war zone, although those things are incredibly courageous. I've never done any of those things. I just have courage in the hair department. Sometimes I'm quite mouthy and people say that's courageous, but I'm here hiding behind my keyboard when I'm mouthy about things like too many old white men on stages and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I actually think courage is an everyday occurrence. Courage makes the world go round. Courage happens every single day. For some people, courage is opening their shop that day when they don't want to face whatever they have to face. Or courage is homeschooling right now, having to sit at a table with their kids and try to make this thing work is really courageous. I haven't been very courageous on that level at all. My kids are teenagers, and I have said to them, I give you Wi-Fi and a well-stocked fridge. The rest is up to you. I am not pushing you to do anything. They each, we're really, really fortunate that they each have a bedroom, so they can just rack off, shut the door, and they have bell times and everything. Their school is running quite well. So I haven't been courageous on that level at all, but other people, boy, have they been courageous with primary school aged kids with learning disabilities, also trying to juggle their own workload and a household. Households want to eat like every night. Courage can be just facing the mental load of dinner every single night of the week and not having a dummy spit. It can just be going, okay, that's what I do for this family and I'm going to get it done. So courage comes in all shapes and sizes. It's about showing up and not behaving like a peanut. So it's actually quite easy to do when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
A lot of courage is just overcoming fear, and all fear is, honestly, is an awful feeling in your tummy.
Yeah.
So if you can compartmentalize it and just go, that's all fear really is. It's just I'm feeling it in my tummy and I just have to feel it and keep moving forward. So much of the difficult things I have been through and what I've had to face has just been about constantly moving forward. So just every day I just keep putting one foot in front of the other and just keep moving forward and not looking back. So, as I've left organisations, I've disconnected from them and just kept moving forward. Look for the next adventure, the next thing. When COVID hit, I had a year's worth of speaking booked in and I had a really fabulous year ahead, and I was probably going to bill the most I'd ever billed as a speaker. And I've been a speaker for 15 years, but it was looking like such a good year and I was going to have the best August I'd ever had. August was just booked to the eyeballs. And then I was actually at a conference for speakers and we were all together when we realised the magnitude of what was happening to the economy and what would happen. And then we were all together when the New Zealand borders closed and all the New Zealanders in the room suddenly vanished. And over the following week, I just watched all of that business vanished before my eyes. So it was either postponed or cancelled altogether. And I just had to look at that as an adventure. And for the first time, actually, I was going through something with everybody else. You know, every time I'd fall on my face, it was all by myself. Everyone else's lives were normal. But at least this time round, while we're not in the same boat, we're all in the same storm.
We are.
And
has that actually made you, like, has that been helpful, knowing that everybody else has got same but different adversity?
Yeah, well, you take it less personally.
yeah, it's not just me. No one's attacking me anymore.
Yeah, it's a lot less personal. It's not about me. It's just about a much broader global event. And now I'm on this forced sabbatical, and it's time to turn this into an adventure. And I guess that, I don't know, is it bravery when you don't have a choice? Not sure.
Well, it's bravery every day, isn't it? And to, like, be able to face your day. I think that's brave when things have changed so much. And I know for you, and that it leads me to the next question, in fact, where your life has changed completely. As I've watched you as a speaker, knowing how much your calendar would have just deleted itself.
And flights in my little Qantas app.
None there anymore.
Vanishing.
So what are you doing? Like, I talk about keeping your resilience bucket full. Like, what are you doing personally to ensure that you can keep a smile on your face when you're looking at that blank calendar for 2020?
Yeah. Well, it's not as blank as I thought it would be, which is really nice. I think clients, certainly in my speaker space, big businesses, have spent the last couple of months taking stock, working out what's what, and now they're looking ahead and going, okay, now we need to look after our people, we need to motivate them, and we need to plan content for them. And so it's not completely blank. It was, but it's not completely blank. Yeah. But it certainly has created a stack of time. And the way I stay positive, honestly, is to stay busy. If I have absolutely nothing planned, my thoughts do take over and I do start to worry. So the first thing I did was I went, oh, great, I've got time. What do I want to get done that I haven't been able to get done because I'm jumping on and off planes and stages and doing media interviews and things? And the first thing was a podcast. I've wanted to do that. It's honestly been on my list for 18 months or longer. And I smashed that thing out. I've got 13 episodes now. And I think I did the first 8 in the first 10 days. So I was doing some 2 a day and doing the production myself. So I learned that skill of how to produce a podcast myself. Cocked it up a little bit along the way, but have learned that. You know what I've learned? Don't have a piece of paper rattling on your microphone.
All right, good tip, thanks.
So I did the podcast. Now I'm mastering Facebook ads for my childbirth book, like really mastering those. There's so much. I'm finishing some studies. So I did some study on cultural competency for Aboriginal Sydney, and I'm really glad I've done that. So I don't talk crap when I talk about Aboriginal Sydney. I'm not just some stupid white woman who has no idea what she's talking about. So I'm really glad I've done that. And I'm finishing some neuroscience study, which is a little bit boring. So it's been good to have the time to go, I'll just do some today.
Let it go in.
Yeah, and that neuroscience study feeds into my speaking. It's so, I sound so much cleverer when I can say the neuroscientists say, and so it's an important study to finish. So I'm getting some stuff done, and that getting things done feels really good. There's a speaker, Michael McQueen, really great guy. He's my mentor. He's such a generous guy, and he calls it doing fast finishes. So look at things that you can finish quickly and just have the satisfaction of going boom, 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 that's done. And that appeals to me. That works for me, to the point where sometimes I go and put things on my to-do list that are almost done just so I can go pa-ching. And you actually do get a little dopamine shot when you achieve something you set out to do. Yeah. My little Microsoft to-do, let me see if it'll make a noise for you. Do you hear that?
Oh, yay.
How nice is that?
No, it's done.
So
Well, it's interesting you talk about your podcast, and before I ask this question, I know we say it's about half an hour, a little over, so if you can hang around, that would be great. If you've got the time, Lucy, we'll
sure. Sorry, I give very long answers.
No, that's all right. But if you have got some questions for Lucy, please put them in the chat box now, remembering that she's going to choose the best comment or question to win her blooming
bundle.
Blooming bundle. All right. But you talk about the podcast, and I know on your podcast you ask what famous people perhaps they've got in their phone.
Oh, yeah.
So my question to you is that, we all have, like, I'm sure you have, oh my gosh, I've got like these people, they're my big, audacious, crazy, just people that I really want to be able to interview one day. I have them too, so I want to know if they're in your phone and you'll be able to introduce them.
Oh, yeah, hit me. Who is it?
Okay, I've got 3.
Sure.
Michelle Obama.
Oh, no, can't help you there.
Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah, nah, can't help you there.
And Rod Stewart.
No.
Oh, God. If anybody is listening and they can introduce me to those 3, that would be terrific. Anyway, I've got one last question for you, Lucy. What is the most impactful piece of wisdom that you have been given by somebody else, and what difference did it make to your life and why?
Oh, gosh, I've been given so many. And I've actually crammed lots of those in to get the girls out, because there's so many bits of wisdom that I've gathered from the amazing people that I've worked for. Look, one that comes to mind is something that Catherine Hamlin said to me really early on when I was dying from the workload and the stress and some of the risks we were taking to raise big money for her work. And she said to me, Lucy, just do it for the patients. And that was very specific to the work we were doing. But behind that is the idea that you need a reason. You need something outside of yourself to get up and go, go, go. So just getting up and going for the money is a bad reason, because that'll fizzle out. That will never actually eject you out of bed at 5 a.m. every morning and make you feel good about what you do. And so in all my work, if I've been able to find my reason, and even if it's just a person that I'm doing it for, that has really, really motivated me and moved me along hard, because I felt a sense of obligation. I've wanted to do it for that person or that cause or that reason. And it was good for working with Catherine Hamlin, because she was really elderly when I first started working for her. So from the time I started working for her, I knew she was going to die at some point. She'd been planning for a death from the time she was 80. She died when she was 96. But I knew that I wouldn't be able to work for her forever. So she said, Lucy, do it for the patients. And there was a patient I met, and I actually published her photo in my book, because her little hopeful face, far out, it used to get me out of bed in the morning. I published a picture where is she? She's here.
But I remember reading about her.
Gorgeous patient used to really move me along. And so you just got to find what that is for you. Can you see? That's her there down the bottom. That's the patient. Ooh, there we go. So I took her portrait in the ward one day, and she had a tragic, heartbreaking story. And so I used to do my work for her, that patient, and she represented all those women that would benefit from the work I was doing. And so having a reason that I could actually put a face to really helped fire me along. I mean, there's so many amazing pieces of wisdom that I've been shared with from much older, more experienced, clever people, and I think of them often, and I refer to them in lots of places.
Yeah.
The girls out. Mm.
And look, what I'm going to do after we finish tonight, everybody, is I'm going to put a link in the comments that will direct you to be able to get the first chapter of Lucy's book, Get the Girls Out, for free. I can assure you right now that whether you read that first or whether you just go, oh, stuff it, I'm just buying a book.
There is a button that says, just give me the whole book.
Yeah. You should just press the button that says "Give me the whole book," because that book is bloody fabulous, and her stories are so inspiring, and the lessons that she's learned that she shares with us in the book are ones that it is really worth reading. And so please, once I put that link in, once we close off, click on it, get the first chapter if you want to, but just get the whole book. That would be the better thing to do. Definitely. And I'm so glad Joe Bainbridge is going to introduce me to Annie Lennox. I'm pretty excited about that. Yay, thanks, Joe. We'll be making that happen.
Joe is a famous celloist.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, that is all we have for us tonight. Unless you have one last question for Lucy, please put it in, or unless Lucy has a closing remark she would like to make.
Closing remark. Closing remark. If you know someone having a baby, they will love this book. It's really fun. The birth stories in it are absolutely gorgeous. There's some famous Australian men. Actually, Osher Gunsberg's probably one of the most famous people I know, and his birth story's in there. He tells a really funny story, because when they went into the hospital to have their baby, the midwife recognised him and just went all fangirl on him and was going, "Oh, tell me about The Bachelor, and is the house for real?" And was just fangirling him. And his wife, her labour just stopped right there. And she didn't have her baby for another 3 weeks.
Oh, my God.
So it's actually a really good demonstration of how adrenaline can just stall labour. But he tells it very well. Yeah.
Oh, well, Lucy, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate all your tips on reinventing ourselves and being courageous amongst all the fear and uncertainty that we're dealing with right now. For everybody who's listening, what will happen is we will get this interview, this Q&A, this Wine and Wisdom transcribed, and I will upload it again to Facebook and share it with Lucy for her to upload to hers, so you can share it with anybody who has missed out, who would really benefit from listening to Lucy's wisdom. If you would like to be notified about who I've got upcoming, when Michelle Obama and Annie Lennox come on, thank you, Joe. Please just DM me or put yes please in the comments, and I will certainly get in contact with how that can happen. But Lucy, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Been wonderful. I truly loved reading your book. I've loved following you over the last 8 years. You are truly inspiring. Thank you for being so courageous and doing all the amazing things you are doing in our world, making such a difference.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thanks for being so flattering.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Keep that pink hair pink.
Oh, yes. My publisher won't let me change it.
No, I'm sure. Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your wine, whatever's in your glass, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Night-night.